All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bird Rights Podcast. This is our NBA trade deadline special. Right after we're recording this a few hours after the trade deadline has passed. Um, Zach isn't here with us today. He had a prior engagement, so I'm here joined with Jack Kovahay and Nick Stansberry.
What's
It
up?
was quite the active trade deadline, so we have a lot to get into today. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I'm ready to get into it, and I think we'll start with what was the biggest move of the day. Jae Crowder. No, obviously the
Yeah,
biggest move of the day is
Mason
Kevin Durant.
Plumlee.
Yeah, Mason Plumlee going to where'd Mason Plumlee? The Clippers. There's too much stuff happened, but obviously we're going to start with Kevin Durant out of nowhere in the middle of the night being traded to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for 4 first-round picks, a pick swap, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Jae Crowder. And you can't forget that TJ Warren was included in the deal to go to the Suns. But
The bubble
yeah,
god.
the bubble god, TJ Warren.
But
Obviously, we have a lot to say on this, but just initial thoughts, and then we'll go into breaking down what it means for both these teams. But initial thoughts, Stans Kovahay on this move.
well,
Yeah,
you go.
here you want to go first?
Okay, sure. No one wants
Okay.
to give our thoughts. I mean, it was like one of the most insane drops I've ever seen. Woj ever have. Like, I was just sitting there and I see it. Like, it just popped up on my watch, and I was like, wait a second. Like, our group chat had a pretty appropriate response. Like all caps messages for like 10 in a row. And like I really just didn't see it coming. Like I knew there was a chance he could get traded like in the next 6 months or so. I just didn't really see it happening like, right then. Just randomly in the middle of the night, not like right before the deadline. It just kind of happened all out of nowhere. And I think Brooklyn did decent. I was surprised they didn't get Aiden, but they got three, well, basically two very solid players for their team now. And they also flipped Jae Crowder so they basically got four first rounders and a swap and then five second rounders. So they came away with quite a lot of picks from this deal. And they got two, great players, like I said. But losing KD, man, like you really it's impossible to win this trade if you're the Nets. So that's how I feel.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily
Okay, it's
impossible,
not
but
impossible, but it's tough.
yeah, I know, but like it. I mean, we're gonna talk about the whole like Kyrie Irving stuff later, but the fact that the Brooklyn Nets now have zero of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving at this
Ben
point.
Simmons. Ben Simmons.
They've got Ben Simmons, running the point for them.
They still have a
God,
respectable roster, which is funny,
They
but
have they have
not nearly
30
good
they have
enough.
33 and D wings. It's hilarious.
And
like
Cam Thomas.
And
like
Cam Thomas.
if you told me like even just a couple years ago that a team with Katie and Kyrie could be like rebuilding within like a day or two is pretty incredible. Like I never really would have predicted that at all. The Suns are now instant contenders. Like if they weren't already, I mean I guess they were beforehand, but you got Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, that's a really good core to build around.
Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna get in some of their holes like later, like at the small forward spot, power forward spot. I mean, wherever KD doesn't play, but man, I mean, I still have to give the Nets a little bit of credit. They did get a good amount back. They got their 4 unprotected first. They got their swap. They got more picks for Jae Crowder, who I mean, I think they might have already had planned on dealing him to Milwaukee when the trade happened. I'd heard that Milwaukee had been looking to get Jae Crowder for a while, but regardless, they got two young pieces. They got a bunch of picks. I don't know. They did probably as best as they could or would reasonably expect to mid-season, I'd say.
Yeah. I'm gonna start with the Nets and their side of this, and then I'll get to the Suns in a little bit. But the Nets, this caps off what is one of the most disastrous eras of basketball any team has had ever. And it's not like this is the second time they've done this now in two regimes in the past, 12, 13 years or whatever it's been, 10 years, where they've traded all their picks, gone all in on a core, and then less than 2 years later, it's just all gone, and they're kind of screwed for the future. They're obviously in a slightly better spot this time, but here's the difference. Last time, when they traded all of their future firsts for 36-year-old Kevin Garnett and 35-year-old Paul Pierce, or whatever it was, 36 and 34, old versions of those players. That was at the time widely debated and some people considered it, whoa, what are they doing? These guys are so old. What are they doing? And then, understandably, and that came back to bite them big time. This time, every GM in the history of basketball takes the opportunity to go sign Kevin Durant, even if they don't want to sign Kyrie. If the conditions of getting Kevin Durant are you have to sign Kyrie, you do it 100 times out of 100. And even at that time, Kyrie still had enough value that you probably would have signed him even on his own. And then once Harden comes available, 10 times out of 10, if you can pair those two with Harden, you do it. And they did it. And for 16 games they played together, my God, did they look good. That Celtics series in 2021, they won in 5 games. They had one game where they combined for 105 points or whatever between the three of them, or 111, something crazy.
Generational offensive
it was
talent.
Generational offensive talent. But Kyrie, kind of took a sledgehammer to the whole thing over the past 2 years. And I get that the Nets wanted to move on from Kyrie and all that, and this KD trade kind of caps that. And I guess my general thought is they did okay with Durant. Like Covey said, you're never gonna feel great when you have to trade Kevin Durant. But my complaint about the KD trade isn't so much about what they got back for KD as much as it is if they were gonna trade KD. I guess maybe they didn't know. Maybe they didn't know they'd get an offer they like, because the rumor was that it took the Suns a while to pony up Bridges. But when that's a huge part of the deal, that's probably the biggest part of the deal. Bridges himself is probably worth 2+ first-round picks.
Yeah.
But if you thought you were going to move on from KD, even if you were going to do it in the offseason, why are you trading Kyrie to the Mavs for 2 win-now players and 1 pick when you could have had, apparently, like the Lakers, apparently they offered 2 unprotected ones and Russ for Kyrie. If I'm the Nets right now, I'd very much like to have 2 unprotected Lakers picks, high upside unprotected Lakers picks, as opposed to a 29 Mavs pick, which, sure, maybe Luka's gone by then, but also Luka's 23 years old. Maybe he's not gone, and that pick is the 27th pick in the draft. There's a much higher likelihood that a 27 Lakers pick or a 29 Lakers pick is a significant asset than it is that Mavs pick is a significant asset. So if they had any idea they were going to trade KD and they just did the Mavs deal like out of spite to the Lakers, that's malpractice. That's terrible. I mean, we'll get to this later. I think that kind of saved the Lakers, because I think what they did might have been better. But for one, they clearly messed up the processing or what they really thought they were going to do with KD. And 2, over the summer, we were talking about like Gobert. Obviously, you can't judge everything by the Gobert scale because he got 5 picks and Kessler and the swap and all this stuff. But
Vanderbilt, Beasley.
Vanderbilt and Beasley and all these guys. Over the summer, there were trade offers. The rumors were the Suns were offering the similar package with all the picks, but they were going to put Aiden in a sign and trade, or they were going to add swaps to it, or all this stuff. And my thought is, they did well, right? 4 picks, 2 kind of really quality young wings that are going to either be building blocks for you or you can flip for even more assets. But it's Kevin Durant. You're telling me they couldn't have pried the rest of the swaps that the Suns have to offer? Or I don't know that I kind of tend to think they didn't even want Ayton because of the money and because of they have Claxton and stuff, so it'd be kind of hard to make that work. Also, Ayton,
Claxton's much more valuable now than he was before.
Yeah. And important to note, Ayton has a temporary no trade clause because of the offer sheet he signed in the way it works with the restricted free agency. It's complicated. CBA stuff, but he could have just said no. So maybe that was part of it. But they obviously, I think they did fine with Durant. They got what they could. They got a ton of picks, kind of replenishing the cupboard after they gave up everything for the Harden trade. Obviously, you'd rather have your own picks when you're going into a rebuild, but nice to get some picks, some young players, and I do think ultimately, I thought they were going to wait till the summer based on what they did with Finney Smith and Dinwiddie, but I do think ultimately pulling the Band-Aid is probably the right decision and getting on with your life. Moving past this era of Nets basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with definitely trading KD once Kyrie was out the building, but again, like you said, I definitely would have taken the 2 unprotected first that Los Angeles had to offer them. I don't know though. Like, yeah, I agree. I feel like they probably could have got more swaps. I mean, last season we had all this Kevin Durant to Phoenix rumors. This isn't exactly a new thing that we're dealing with today. But oh my gosh, I
But it
mean,
actually happened.
yeah, and it happened so late at night, which means they're clearly like either they threw in like a last minute offer to like
So actually,
push him over.
the new owner of the Nets, Woj reported this. The new owner of the Nets, they had talked
You
earlier in
mean
the
you
day.
mean Suns?
Oh,
Suns,
sorry,
yeah.
yeah, Suns, yeah. Matt Ishbia. Woj reported that earlier in the day they talked about the Durant thing. It didn't look like it was going anywhere, and then they were talking to the Hawks about John Collins as like a pivot, and then Ishbia's like, just call him again and offer put in Bridges and he said give him the Godfather offer basically. Oh, excuse me. Um, and he said give him the Godfather offer, and I guess that got it done. That they got the Nets to do it, and it sounded like KD and the Nets had a working relationship. Because credit to KD, as dysfunctional as Harden was, as dysfunctional as Kyrie was, KD showed up to work even after his trade request. He showed up to work and he worked whenever he could, whenever he wasn't hurt, and when he was hurt, he was rehabbing with them on the right. He did everything right, facility wise, and being with the team. So I think the Nets wanted to work with him, and it sounded like KD was like, you can keep me or you can trade me to the Suns, but
Yeah, he
anything
wanted
else,
Phoenix.
don't trade me to don't trade me to New Orleans, don't trade me somewhere I don't want to go. Um, and so it sounded like the Nets were just trying to pry everything they could from the Suns, and then once they got that off from the Suns, like, all right, we're gonna do this eventually. Might as well rip the Band-Aid.
Want to
Yeah,
talk about the Suns now?
Yeah,
because I don't know, like if you're Brooklyn, once Kyrie's gone, I mean, I would struggle to not take the offer. Like you said, it's an offer you can't really refuse. Like, ah, it seemed like they tried to keep it together with the Kyrie trade, like you said. Like they got Dinwiddie back, they got Dorian Finney-Smith like that. Yeah, you could. Like there's still like a team that's avoiding the play and probably winning around. It depends on who they play,
Yeah,
but
with Durant out there, yeah.
they're like I think they just realized they're not really like going anywhere that much. And with the new Suns owner, I mean, that's the kind of statement that you really like want to make. Coming
This
in
Nets team's gonna be
like
really like weird and interesting to watch because their best player is who? I could not tell you. Maybe Claxton at this point. Like I really
I
don't
think
know.
I think it's Claxton. Yeah, I think that's right.
Which is
yeah.
he's not a bad player by any stretch, but he's probably like the worst best player or one of the worst best players on any team in the league. So it's like how are they gonna steer this team with like 10 great role players? I've never seen a role player roster like this before. Although their payroll's still pretty high because they're paying Ben Simmons a like super max shit like that. So that's
I'm
also going to be horrible. Probably
so
an
I
unmovable
mean
contract.
so I don't know how many of these contracts for the Nets are expiring at the end of the season, but you got to imagine they part with some of these guys, right? At the
Yeah,
end
I thought
of the
today
season.
they would trade some
Curry.
of O'Neal, Curry, Joe Harris,
Yeah.
um, all even some of the young like Watanabe. They have too many guys that play. Like I don't know what they're gonna do with their rotations, but
Looking at it, the only player that fully expires next season is Seth Curry. Literally everyone else is there. Royce O'Neal is like partially guaranteed. Dinwiddie is like partially guaranteed, but they're all under contract.
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
Cam
like,
Johnson they have to resign. That's it.
hmm.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
I think the Nets they're just gonna they have no incentive to full on tank because they don't have their own picks. Although some of it is a little bit misleading because some of the every other year until whatever it is 2027 they do have their pick. It's just a swap with the Rockets, and for now at least the Rockets are also bad. So you could still get a lottery pick some of these years. It'll be the worst of two lottery picks, but um
Tank off.
yeah, they're having a tank off with the Rockets. Um, but yeah, I think we can move on from the Nets a little bit here and talk about the Suns because the Nets are a weird team with a bunch of 3-and-D wings that for now will I think be a fringe playoff team, have a
I
lot more
mean,
fun in the front office and the head coaching because they don't have to deal with this shit anymore. But yeah, end of a really dumb era.
I mean, do you want to talk about do you want to briefly talk about Jae Crowder now or later?
Sure, we can talk about Crowder now.
Because we talked about are they going to get rid of any of these guys, and
Yeah,
well,
so
there's one
they got
guy
rid
they got
yeah.
rid of.
They got rid of Crowder. They got 5 seconds for him. He had no place on the Nets at this point, so no reason to worry about that. And for Milwaukee, pick up another quality wing. I hate Jay Crowder, so I disapprove. I think Jay Crowder's dirty and he's trash talking for no reason all the time. But you know, when he's not missing every single three, because he shoots like 34% from three on a season, or 36, or somewhere between 34 and 37%, but he'll never shoot 34 or 37% in like a month. It'll be 12% for a month and then 50% for a month. That's how Jay Crowder plays. So if he gets hot in the playoffs, he can be a big part of a winning team. When he made back-to-back finals with Miami and Phoenix, he'll continue to be a winning piece, and it kind of makes up for the loss of PJ Tucker from 2 years ago when Milwaukee they never really replaced him properly, and this I think is doing that for them, and I think that's a big deal.
I mean, they still have Bobby Portis to really bring that intensity down low that PJ Tucker is kind of known for.
Yeah, but
But
Tucker was guarding wings and stuff. It's not like
yeah,
Portis can do that.
yeah, that's true. But I mean, I kind of like it from all of the injury concerns to Milwaukee's top forwards this season. Chris Melton's missed a lot of time. Giannis has missed some time. I think it's nice to just get Jay Crowder to fill in there, I guess.
He'll get serious minutes in the playoffs too. Um,
Yeah.
I think he'll end up starting for them. I'm not sure.
Starting or sixth man, yeah.
Yeah, I think they'll probably end up starting with Drew Middleton, Giannis, Crowder, and Lopez or Portis, whatever one they want to go to. Usually Lopez starts, but
I guess Grayson Allen off the bench.
yeah, and then Allen or Connaughton. Um, it'd be Crowder or Connaughton as that fifth starter. But yeah, he helps them. But 5 second-round picks is a lot of 5 second-round pick packages going around today, but this was one of them, and it was, I think, a good ad for Milwaukee. But to get back to Phoenix's side of the KD thing, um, new owners always like making big splashes. Obviously, there's some risk involved with all the future assets. With all that said, like it was for the Nets when they could get Harden, it's as much of a no-brainer as it can be. Even with giving up Bridges, even with giving up Johnson and all the picks, if you get the chance to get Kevin Durant while still playing like one of the best players in the league, one of the unquestionably 7 best players in the league, I'd have him top 5. And some people would still argue he's the best player in the league. I would argue against that, but there are those who still believe that, and it's not ridiculous. It's not crazy. Maybe it's a little crazy, but it's not like a crazy thing to say. People won't look at you crazy if you say that. You can have a real discussion. But Kevin Durant makes this team with CP3, Book, and KD and Ayton have the strongest, top 4 in the league. I think unquestionably. I don't know who would come even close.
The Washington Wizards, I think, are close second.
Beal,
They're
Kristaps,
right
Kuzma,
there.
Beal, Kristaps, Kuzma, and Morris. Yeah,
The fire.
do it. Yeah.
Avdia.
I I just got like a shiver down my spine when you mentioned these players
No,
as
but
a divisional opponent.
yeah, I think the Suns, firm. I don't know who their fifth starter will be. Um, maybe Torrey Craig. Maybe they just traded for Darius Baisley. Maybe Baisley slides in there.
If they can
Um,
be fairly active on this buyout market, they might
sounds like
have
Will Barton might be a name that
if they
they're
have
interested
some
in.
they have some some roles that will be filled.
Yeah, it sounds like Will Barton and Reggie Jackson have been linked to the Suns so
Mhm.
far as buyout players. I
They're
don't know
not
about
great, but
I don't know about Reggie Jackson. I think campaign's
Yeah.
better, but
I think so too. I think Will
Will
Barton
Barton would
also
be
is
nice. Yeah, Barton would be
yeah.
nice. Danny Green, who is off an ACL and doesn't look good. As far as buyout wings go, there aren't a lot, so that'd be fine. Not to play a ton, but given I am seriously concerned about their depth. As much of a contender as they are, they're going to have at least one player on the floor at all times that you don't feel great about. Even like Craig is fine, I guess. And then you're going to get to the bench, and that bench is bare right now. There is nothing on that bench. It's campaign and a whole lot of. I guess we're playing Darius Baisley now. I guess we're playing.
Let's see. It's like
Is
I'm about
Josh
to look at the
Okogie still? Is
roster.
Josh Okogie still there? Is he going to get serious minutes off the bench?
Okogie's still there. Let's see. Bismack
It's not.
Biombo.
Ugh, that's
Yeah,
fine,
that's
I
what I was thinking
guess.
about. Like for backup center,
Damian Lee's having a really good year actually. Landry
Damian be
Shamet
fine.
is there.
I mean, yeah, like when Landry Shamet comes back.
Still, they don't have quality players I trust in off their bench. Certainly
Yeah,
when
nothing
compared to
huge. No.
even like Golden State, who was a thin bench, has a much better bench than them, and that's been a serious problem for them all year. And when you're playing these other contenders in the West, Denver's got a deep team or deep enough. You only have to play 8 really in the playoffs, but 7 or 8, sometimes 7, and usually 8 guys playing in big playoff games, 8 or 9. But they have 4 I trust, and then a lot of question marks after that. But that top 4 is damn good. That top 4 is really damn good.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really have everything, can
No,
you?
you can't. Well, unless you're the Warriors in 2017. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
in that case, the Warriors in 2017 had a top 4 better than this top 4 by a good bit, and then still had Livingston and Iguodala and David West still was giving them good minutes and all that, and JaVale was giving all that good stuff. But this isn't that team. My point is, this isn't like a super team with all this depth. They have an MVP. They have somebody who's like top 10 to borderline top 10 guy in Booker. And then CP3 and Ayton know their roles and are really, Ayton at this point in his career is going to, get boards for them, play defense, rim roll, be perfect for that team. CP3 at this point in his career doesn't need to be putting up 20 points in playoff games, can help others, can be the leader of that team vocally, and it'll be big for them. But they're, I'd consider them the favorites in the West at this point. Even with their depth issues, if they can add a competent body or two in the buyout market, whether that be Will Barton, it's kind of interesting. Will Barton, I think, is he wasn't great for the Wizards, but if you can get him, he'll play. This team is thin enough that Will Barton will play 20 plus minutes a night for this Suns team, and they'll need him to because they're missing out on that wing depth right now. But yeah, I'm not sure who I'd pick, but they are certainly the deserved favorites in the West as of now.
Yeah, like some of my friends were talking about like late last night, like, oh, like Suns are winning a championship, and then other people were saying like, oh, you're crazy for thinking that. Like, I don't think I'd take the Suns over the field at this point in time. I
No,
mean,
certainly
even
not over the East. I think the East. I think there's a few East teams that match up really well against that team.
agreed. And even if they get Will Barton or even Reggie Jackson, who I'm not as big of a fan of, especially for the Suns, like to get out of the West, ooh, that's close. That's close if they've got a better than 50-50 shot there than the field to get out of the West. That's gonna be tough. But overall, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, we could go into depth in like I guess now or later on
We'll
who
get back to
really
some
the
of the
best
buyout.
team.
We'll get back to some of the buyout guys in a little bit. But yeah, Kobe, any last thoughts on the
Yeah, I was
Durant
gonna
thing?
just give my little last thoughts. I
Yeah,
mean, it's one of the craziest trades we've seen. I already said that, but this makes Phoenix like an instant This is probably the best. I mean, they had some really good rosters the last couple of years, I guess. It depends if you're like, would you rather have KD or like this roster of like 10 really good guys? I mean, it's probably comparable. I'd rather have KD when it really comes down to it, I think. But they are going to miss all the guys that they gave up. Like they were all valuable contributors to them being so good last year and in the regular season and then the playoffs the year before that. They could have easily won the championship without KD. But this might give him the best chance.
Second time Kevin Durant goes to a team that could have won the championship without him.
Yeah. Yeah, but at least this time, like, he cost them assets. He did a little bit with the Warriors too, but not nearly as much, I don't think.
Yeah, no,
Bogut and Barnes versus, Bridges, Crowder, and Johnson and all those picks. But anyway, what a great trade for, the Suns. Get bought and then immediately he pushes all his chips on the table. He's gonna be like Steve Cohen if he had a salary cap. To make a cross.
If he didn't, I wouldn't really want to imagine that. Like any new owner without a salary cap would be crazy. But obviously hypothetical.
But the Suns really did a number with this one.
The one last thing I want to say on this is on Durant specifically himself. It's interesting for him. I'll say that because this puts the pressure back on. He was kind of going to have if he went on a little run and played well in the playoffs with that Nets team with no other stars, he'd be commended. He'd be commended, and nobody would ever say anything. Nobody would give him flack so long as he played well enough, and he could have like if he got to like the conference finals, of a legendary kind of run right there. But this puts him back in pole position to be one of the favorites, and now he's got to come through. It's not the Warriors, so it's not like it was a foregone conclusion that they were going to win. But it is, he'll get some shit if they don't win games, even if it's not his fault. That's just how this kind of works.
They just have so much star power now.
Yeah, they do. And the spotlight will be on them for sure. And one thing somebody mentioned on TV that I thought was funny about Durant, they said for 3 days, Kevin Durant was on a team without a future Hall of Famer for the first time since he was in Seattle. And that lasted all of 3 days till he was like, "Get me off this team. I need Hall of Famers around me." Which
he had 1 year in Seattle without Hall of Famers, and then that was it.
Yep. And now he's back. He had 3 days in the middle of February. But all right, we can move on past this trade. We'll mention a little bit again later when we come to some other stuff and buyout candidates. But we'll move on to the Lakers and their plethora of moves they made. Obviously, the big trade being the 3-teamer with Utah and Minnesota that went down yesterday that we mentioned briefly on the football podcast.
Yeah, we had to react live to it.
Yeah, we had a live reaction to that. But now we can cover, obviously, I'll just say the pieces again. They got D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, and Malik Beasley. They sent out Russell Westbrook, Juan Toscano-Anderson, Damian Jones, a first-round pick in 2027, protected 1 through 4, that conveys as a second-round pick if it does not convey 1 through 4, and a second-round pick that went to Minnesota. And then today they traded Patrick Beverley and 1 second-round pick for
Mohamed
Bamba. And they traded, and that was offset. It was just kind of swap of centers. They traded Thomas Bryant to the Nuggets for Devon Reed and 3 second-round picks. So I'll let Stans go first here to give his thoughts on all the Lakers moves. I'm a Lakers fan, so I have a lot to say, and I'll save that to go last. But I'll let Stans go first here.
I mean, good Lord, was there a lot of stuff that's gone on from the Lakers? Not even just like the past 2 days, but like with Rui and all that too. But I mean, I feel like I've never seen the Lakers like make this good of like a move within like the last like 5 or so years or whatever. It's been a long time. I know we were all laughing when Russell Westbrook was heading into town, but they managed to get him out and get him to the Jazz for a pretty good deal, I would say. Like, I really can't ask too much more for like the Lakers than what they did. They only gave up 1 first-round pick, didn't give up the second one, which I would have thought would have had to happen to get like Russ out of there and get anything meaningful in return. But they managed to not do that. And when second-round picks are being tossed around, I mean, sure, they took a bunch in, but who cares if you're giving a couple away to get Russ off the books and get some quality players back? I mean, D'Lo back in LA is going to be pretty interesting to watch. I mean, I'm sure you'll get into that fit more in a minute, but I'm a big fan of Vanderbilt. I mean, I'm probably a little bit biased to the Jazz in general, but I think that's a pretty solid pickup. Bryant's giving you a lot of rebounds. That's now gone. So you have Vanderbilt, and then you also have Bamba to make up for that. Gives you a nice like perimeter option even for LeBron too at points in the game. I think he's shooting. Is he shooting like round about 40% or
He's
something?
shooting 40% from three on like 2 or 2.5 attempts a game.
which is
Yeah, which
solid for
I
sure.
mean that's nice for somebody like LeBron to like pass out of. Almost gives you like a Chris Bosh kind of feel, except obviously heavily discounted.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like they only gave up one first, then they almost got as many seconds back as they gave up, assuming we've got it listed correctly on here.
They gave up it was a lot of to keep track of probably. They gave up like 3 seconds for Rui and then like got
Got
They
three
got all
back.
back.
three. They got all three of those back for
And then they
Bryant.
gave up one for Bamba. So something like that.
But I mean, for them to give up one first and 1 second, and then still get players like D'Lo, Rui, Russ off their
Oh yeah.
books, Vanderbilt, Mo Bamba, like I mean, I'm not a big Lakers fan at all. I mean, I'm sure you know that, Declan, but I have to give respect. I think they did a good job.
Yeah, I'll also give my take. I mean, first, I think it's funny that Thomas Bryant requested a trade today. Like he signed with the Lakers, first of all. It's not like he didn't know he was going to be the backup. That's what I was saying earlier. It's just kind of strange. But then they had no choice, I guess, but to deal him out. Denver is the beneficiary of that. But overall, the Lakers did really well. Like I'm pleasantly surprised that they were able to get bitten. I wouldn't even call it bargain shopping, but for the sense that they paid so little, relatively speaking, to get like 5 or 6 viable rotation players, and they only lost maybe like 2 rotation players at this point. Um, I would say that's definitely a plus. Like their roster got a lot better. And if LeBron and AD can stay healthy, like they really do have almost like 10 guys you can really rely on now, which will be enough. So I'm pleasantly surprised. I hope like LeBron's teams always seem to have these really weird mid-season makeovers that kind of come out of nowhere.
It's eerily similar to that 2018 Cavs team
Yeah,
when
like
they and
that.
even the types of players they got, like Clarkson and Beasley, you can kind of see the connection. Vanderbilt and Larry Nance Jr., you can kind of see the connection. George Hill and D'Lo, you can kind of see the connection. Rodney
Mhm.
Hood and Rui Hachimura, you can kind of see the connection. So it's even similar kinds of players they were getting.
Right.
The difference
And
is that 2018 team didn't have Anthony Davis. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Um,
That team was so
but
bad, but
Yeah, that team
okay.
was terrible. But if that team would have been nice if they had another top 10 player in the world on it. It's because they had a bunch of solid role players at that point. But to get into, so I mentioned the other day on the basketball podcast, post talking about Kyrie and stuff. Rob Pelinka was trying so hard to be a patient, competent GM who doesn't make harsh decisions, doesn't panic trade. He's trying so hard. And Lakers fans, myself included, were like begging to get Russ out of there for months. Take the Turner Hield trade, which on that one is the one that you can look back on and be like, okay, that still would have been fine if they had given up both picks for Turner and Hield. But everything else, because people were like, "Oh, give up both picks for this package. Give up both picks." Like this time last year, people were like, "Give up one of the firsts to get John Wall instead of Russ," and all this stuff would have been terrible. And Rob, I'm not a Rob Pelinka fan. Certainly, Stan said they haven't made great moves in the last 5 years, and he's mostly right. The only time they did make great moves was by accident because they missed out on Kawhi and they just signed whatever was left, and whatever was left happened to be a bunch of players who had picked out the Lakers as a spot that would work for them, and the players were right. Danny Green was like, "Oh, that would fit for me." And stuff like JaVale was like, I would be fit for me to stay here. And KCP was like, it's a fit for me. And that worked out. I'm not giving Rob too much credit for that. Obviously, he gets some credit for building that team, but then he blew that team up for no reason. I'll stop talking about that. But he did a good job waiting out the market, not panic trading Russ, and he waited out until Russ's it was no longer we have to give up a first to get rid of Russ. It was Russ is an expiring it's just $47 million of expiring money, and now it's only $16 million of expiring money that teams are taking in. So they traded Russ, and they got a bunch of, like I said, a bunch of competent role players that will make this interesting to go in, like each of these guys individually. D'Lo, I'm not the biggest D'Angelo Russell fan, but if you're getting D'Lo from years 2019 to 2022, that's fine. He's a fine player. He'll be if he's your point guard, I think you can win with that if you're doing well in other spots, and I think the Lakers are doing well enough. If you're getting D'Lo from this year with his shooting splits from this year and how he's playing on lower volume, he's shooting fewer shots this year, only 13 and a half shots a game as opposed to 15 the year before, and I think over closer to 16 the year before that. But now he's shooting, his effective field goal percentage is up to 57% when it's hovered around 50, 51% all of the other years of his career. 39% from three this year and 47% from the field, while 86% from the line. And he's always had solid vision as a passer. He's not. Yeah, you can go ahead, Stans.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna chime in real quick. You can get back to it. I'm pretty sure it's his highest like assist numbers too for his career by like.
It's close. Yeah, it's close. He's averaging like 6.3. He had a year where he averaged like 7, 6, almost. But yeah, he's up there just as high as he's ever been. And so if this is the version of D'Angelo Russell you're getting, it's a steal because he's been genuinely, he's not all-star caliber or anything, but if you had, 8th team all NBA, he'd be on it. He's like one of the, 35 to 45th best player in the league, something like that. Strictly this year. Before that, he has his flaws where he can fall asleep on defense, and he can be a little bit of a black hole on offense sometimes. But when you're coming from Westbrook, D'Angelo Russell is like Jason Kidd, because Westbrook is the biggest black hole in the history of basketball.
And also, D'Lo was looking really solid for Brooklyn that one year, and then when he left for Golden State for like those 30 games, he was really good.
He was miscast in Golden State where he's taking a million shots.
Yeah,
that didn't make sense for him.
Yeah, he was miscast, but he was pretty effective in those minutes. But now, maybe it was once he can leave Minnesota, like maybe the LA can be like his new home or something.
Yeah, and he played well in Minnesota this year, and the years before that he wasn't. He was a quality starting point guard the years before this. He just wasn't like all that impressive, but he's been impressive this year. So if you can get that, that's great. Jared Vanderbilt adds a whole lot of defense on the wing that you need, as a rebounder, and he can stick out there with some of the bigger wings. That's a big deal. He's 6'9", great rebounder, great defender, and offensively he leaves some to be desired quite a bit. But he's not much of a shooter. He shoots like 1-3 a game, makes it at like 33%. So it's not like he'll shoot it if he's open. It's
he's
not
shooting
like
1-3 per game this year, but his career high before that was only 0.2 per game. So
yeah, so I'm saying this year
he's starting to work it into his game a little bit.
Yeah. So, but my point is that he'll shoot it if he's open.
Yeah,
It's not like they don't really have to guard him out there, but he'll take one, and that's coming along. But that's not what you have him for. You have him to be out there. He'll play with Anthony Davis some. You'll have him to be a defender and a rebounder, and it's a good role player that the teams need. A lot of teams would like a player like Jared Vanderbilt. I'm surprised that they couldn't shop him separately for a pick, especially given his contract and all that. And then Malik Beasley, I think, is, to put it, I guess the simplest way to put it, he's the Malik Monk replacement, right? He comes in and gives them what they had in Malik Monk last year, which was one of their only positive players outside of LeBron and AD. And I think that'll be a big scoring boost off the bench. And then Bamba fits a little better than Bryant right now, a little better defensively, although Bamba's not great, but he's fine. He's a good backup big to have. And he's got more upside. And more importantly, with losing Pat Bev in that deal, Pat Bev's whatever, but his contract expires. Bamba's on team-controlled contract for the next 2 years. It's really sound asset management, moving off Beverly and Bryant, picking up more picks back. It's something, it looks like, I'm like, holy shit, Rob Pelinka is making like really sound moves where he's picking up 3 second-round picks, using one to get a center back and to replace Bryant. and getting team controlled contracts. It looks like something the Clippers were doing a few years ago, like kind of how they were building out. The Clippers have all these contracts on their books that are like, they had Kennard, obviously they traded him, but they had all these guys with Morris and Kennard and Covington and Batum and all these competent role players. And this is kind of how you start to build that depth. When you have expirings that you're not going to keep, if you're okay with spending more money, you trade that for players that you have under team control that you can use a little bit. And Bamba kind of helps you there and gives you some size you can play. And
the
they're in a
last
much
two
better
seasons. Oh,
much
go
better
ahead.
spot. I was just saying they're in a much better spot, and they still have a hole to dig out of the standings. They'll need to go 16-11 ish, 15-12 to get their way into that play in, which I think is doable. They're going to lose tonight, so maybe 15-11, or 16-10 because they're going to lose tonight. They don't have half their team, and LeBron sitting against the Bucks, but. If they can get on a little winning streak, get in the play in, I'm pretty confident they'd be able to get out of the play in. Although it's always scary because it's one game, but they could get their way back into the playoffs. I don't think they're contending this year. It's too late for that. But if you can keep this kind of role players together, and LeBron can stay LeBron, and AD can stay healthy, these are all a lot of ifs. But they are now in a position where I think they can seriously be a playoff team this year. Probably lose to Denver if they have to play them in the first round, but maybe they'll get a game or two off of them. And then going into next year, you're looking at a roster that is serious and if they can gel together, maybe add one more piece on the mid-level in free agency, and you're looking at a much more serious team that could maybe come back to contention next season.
Yeah,
I was
I
gonna
mean,
just
I was about to
mention
say like this first round playoff matchup, if the Lakers can either get in, but presumably make it out of the play in. I mean that's gonna be a very fun series to like start off with. Like if they play,
I'd be annoyed if I was Denver. I'd be
Nuggets.
annoyed.
I'd be very annoyed. I guess that's kind of the play in, like teams that just are more talented than they should, than their seeding would reflect, and might end up winning the tournament, and then the one seed kind of gets fucked
with
over.
with the Steph injury, the 1 and 2 seed might their prize might be getting to play Steph Curry and the Warriors and LeBron and the Lakers in the play in the playoffs. That would not be great for Memphis and Denver, but yeah.
One last little minor note. I was just looking into stats again, and Malik Beasley might be one of the biggest 3-point chuckers in the league. Honestly, over the last 2 seasons, he's averaging 8 threes or 8 3-point attempts a game, and only 3 2-point attempts per game.
What's he shooting from 3 on those 2 seasons? Like 37, like league average.
It's
right?
like 36, 37. Yeah. He's very below average from 2, unfortunately. But
it's
from
37 over the past 2 seasons combined.
He shoots as many threes as anyone. Since he got to Minnesota.
Shooting league average at 30 at not 38 attempts a game, at 8 attempts a game is that's a great shooter. That's somebody you like to have in your roster.
Yeah.
Especially on this roster, it's welcome. You need someone. You need kind of a gunner like that. They've been missing that.
You need a Kyle Korver on this Lakers team.
Every team needs a Kyle Korver.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the Lakers are in a better spot. But we can move on from them now. Obviously, hats off to Rob Pelinka for being patient and making a move and getting a protection on that pick. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't think he knew what a pick protection was. So I'm glad he got that top 4 protection, and that way you're not totally screwed in the future. If you're looking for you're tanking at that point, you're not screwed if you would have gotten Wembanyama's younger brother or whatever is going on then.
Thanasis Antetokounmpo type.
Yeah. But we can move on to the other LA team now. They were also one of the big movers today. More move. Staying at I guess staying at the crypto.com arena. But they made more moves in the fringes than the Lakers, obviously, because they didn't have to blow up their entire roster to build a competent one. They brought in Bones Highland, Mason Plumlee, and Eric Gordon, and sent out Reggie Jackson, John Wall, Luke Kennard, and I don't know, some amount of second round picks. I don't feel like checking exactly how many. I think it was probably around 3 or 4.
They also got some.
They got some back.
Got some too.
We're not going to mention the second round picks too much. It's too much to keep track of. I'm gonna be honest.
Yep.
But I can start on the Clippers for this one. I think Bones Highland is an interesting ad for them. He comes in, and they're getting much younger at point guard, going from Jackson and Wall getting most of the minutes to now it's going to be Terrence Mann and Bones Highland getting those point guard minutes. And another name that I'll mention in a little bit that maybe is going to get some of those point guard minutes. But Bones Highland is a good ad for them. He's
Very
for
cheap,
some
I
reason he's
thought.
cheap. He was unhappy in Denver for some reason, but I think it's a good fit alongside Kawhi and Paul George because he's not a great defender, but the Clippers of all teams can make up for that with all of the defenders they have on the wing. And Plumlee is, I think, it's a perfect backup for Ivica Zubac. He's kind of a similar player. Plumlee is probably a better offensive player. If Plumlee's playing
I'm
like he played
guy.
this year, yeah, Plumlee's
Plumlee's
basically Jokic the way he's
very
playing this year. But
baby Jokic here.
yeah, Plumlee is a good ad to get them some size because when Zubac wasn't out there, who was their backup center? I don't think they had one really. Like
I don't know.
they lost Hartenstein, which
Yeah,
hurt because Hartenstein's been
That was a big
awesome.
loss.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say is that he's gone now, obviously.
yeah.
I can't even see who their backup center is when
I
I'm
don't think they
looking.
had one. They needed a competent big
Like
because
Covington.
yeah, the league went in this direction where it was all these little guys all the time, people playing, big forwards at the center spot, and there's still some of that. Um, but with all these bigs coming along right now, especially with Jokic being at the top of the conference and Ayton being up there, and on the other side Embiid and Giannis and AD, you need that size now. You can't play small ball, and it's I think the Warriors might run into some problems this if they have to get a matchup like that. But for the Clippers, it's big to get Plumlee to add some more size there, and then Eric Gordon. The Gordon thing's a little weird to me for the Clippers. I like it; he's a good player. He adds a lot of shooting, like kind of like Malik Beasley. He's a little bit of a shot chucker, but he's been more efficient these last few years. If I'm remembering correctly, I know last year was one of his most efficient years ever. I'm not sure about this year. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah,
can you fill me in?
yeah. I got it. I got it. This year, not the best from three. Just over 5 attempts, 35% is not exactly where
No,
Gordon's
but
been.
he's got the reputation and he's guarded like a real sniper. So
Yeah,
he helps the spacing that way.
because like last season he was at 41% on over
Yeah.
5 attempts, which is
Yeah. So
obviously
and Gordon also is a little bit of a ball handler. He's not just a shooter. Like he can go get his own shot, but he also is a little ball handler. He's underrated playmaker. It's a little weird to me because it's kind of I feels like it's just Norman Powell and they have Norman Powell. But it's a similar kind of
Norman.
player. Yeah, Norman. That's a Game of Zones shout out right there. Um, he's my friend. But yeah, Gordon, I don't quite understand as much, but it's a good move. I think he's an upgrade over Kennard, so I understand why they did it. And then the other move that they haven't made yet, but it sounds like they're the favorites to sign Russell Westbrook. And I can understand how they could talk themselves into it because Paul George played with him
He's
and
recruiting
Russ,
him.
and they'll be like, "Oh, the Lakers didn't have these shooters around him. Russ, when he plays with us, will have the defense behind him, and he'll have these shooters, and he'll be able to attack." And that might be true. Maybe he'll be a little more productive than he is in LA, but that doesn't mean he's going to start making rational decisions in big moments in basketball games.
Oh yeah.
And so you can go for it, sign Russ, but you got to make sure you better not start him, and you also better not let him think he's closing important games. And my thing is, if he's not closing important games, he's not going to want to play there. So I think I would be very hesitant about signing Russell Westbrook and giving him minutes here, but someone's going to pick up Russell Westbrook. Um, Honestly, I think Phoenix probably should because they just need minutes at this point for the regular season. Just cut them when the playoffs come around. But yeah, I think if the Clippers get him, I'll be very curious to see how that goes. But hopefully Russ buys in and doesn't go too crazy if he goes there and is willing to. But I just don't see it. I can't imagine Russ having learned some lesson crazy out of nowhere here. But the fit is definitely better on paper, I guess. And I guess if anybody else will talk about that or the Clippers in general, but I do think they're going to get Russ. That seems to be where this is headed.
Yeah, I'm kind of a fan of it, like of all the moves that they made in total. I mean, I think Bones is a really solid piece. I heard he wasn't happy in Denver.
There were some reports coming out today that were kind of like he wasn't even like flying. Well, he was flying commercial instead of
A
flying with
lot
the
of
team.
mid players asking for trades this year. Thomas Bryant,
Yeah,
Furkan Korkmaz, Bones Highland.
yeah, I didn't really understand that one, but I think he does help out the Clippers a lot and like lessens the need of Russell Westbrook because I mean Bones can like pass. Gordon can pass. Plumlee's actually a very underrated passer. He's averaging like 4 assists per game on the season or something like that. He has one of the craziest like random player highlight tapes. I'd say he does like
Yep.
some crazy between the leg stuff, whatever. But here's my take on this whole Russell Westbrook thing, right? So I would personally not do it. I'd stay away because here's what's happening in my mind. Russ agrees, buys in. First 3 weeks, it goes great. Russ in his head is like, oh, everything's working out just fine. He'll think he's him again, and he'll mess it all up. That's exactly what I see happening. I mean, we'll see if they actually get him, but I
I'm
mean,
surprised that we haven't seen him get officially bought out yet. I know it takes a little bit of time, but
yeah. Overall, I'm pretty happy though with the Clippers at the
Yeah,
end.
yep.
Like,
Both
good
LA
moves.
teams have won the deadline probably on paper.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, do we want to go through like some of the other trades and just give like the brief analysis? I can
Yeah,
just
we can go
scroll.
through. Yeah, we can go through. I have a list of not the trades exactly, but some of the contenders that made moves on the fringes, kind of. We already talked about the Bucks and Jae Crowder, so we don't have to talk about that. The Warriors getting Gary Payton the second back in a big 4-team trade. I believe Sadiq Bey went to Atlanta in that trade, which is
Yep.
a sneaky good get for them. About 10 second round picks moving in that deal in some direction or another.
We
Um,
get 5.
yeah, Kevin Knox going somewhere, and then James Wiseman going to the Pistons. But for the Warriors, I think that's the team that's important to talk about here. We can talk about the Hawks briefly too. I just we don't need to talk about the Pistons,
Yeah.
or the Trailblazers really because the Blazers got picks. The Blazers replaced Gary Payton in the Thibault move, which is weird. I guess saving money and getting a similar player, but Payton's much better. I guess they traded Hart. The Blazers have been weird. They've been making weird moves, but for the Warriors. For
They
the
got Kevin
Warriors,
Knox. That was their big
Well, they
acquisition.
got Cam
And
Reddish.
Cam Reddish, yeah.
okay, yeah, I guess they got Thibault too,
And
but
that's not a great.
yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm
I don't know
not.
They
what
got Thibault, I guess,
I
too.
don't know what the Blazers are doing, but it's not really worth talking about. They're going to fall out of the play-in anyway. Um, the Warriors get Gary Payton back. He, I think, adds stability to that bench that they really, really needed. They have a player they now trust who they can get serious minutes in the playoffs. He was awesome for them last playoffs. Um, And I think this obviously makes them better. They give up Wiseman, which is worth it. It's kind of funny how this came about. A lot of teams, a lot of reunions going on, a lot of teams learning from their mistakes as well. And the Warriors kind of had the combination of the two. The Warriors lost Gary Payton because they didn't want to pay the tax bill of giving him $9 million or $10 million a year. And the reason they didn't want to do that is because they were already getting the taxes from Wiseman getting that money. So now they realize they messed up, put their pride aside, and be like, all right, let's just trade Wiseman for him. Let's just get him back for Wiseman.
And all of the picks that,
And well, no, they didn't trade because they didn't trade any picks because they
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Wiseman was
It was
traded
Wiseman for Peyton, yeah.
for the picks, and then the picks went to pay for Peyton essentially. But yeah, it's a good fit. I will say I don't know that I wouldn't have rather just had Sadiq Bey. Like I feel like that would have been kind of more interesting. Um,
Yeah.
and a more size on the wing, which they kind of need behind Wiggins, because Kuminga's been okay, but I still don't know if I trust him in big spots. And Draymond is getting old and hasn't been great, and he might leave next year. We'll see where that goes. But I honestly would have liked to have seen them because clearly the Pistons would take Wiseman for Bay straight up because they got Wiseman and they gave up Bay. That was their involvement in the trade. So clearly they would have been willing to do that. And the money works. And I guess you could have or just may still kept it a 4-team deal, whatever. They clearly could have had Sadiq Bey instead of Gary Payton the Gary Payton the Junior, Gary Payton the second.
Junior.
And It's interesting that they chose to go with Gary Payton. I guess that it's because they know it works and they don't want to take any risk. But I would have been much more interested to see what they could have looked like with Sadiq Bey. I would have loved to see them with Bey, honestly.
Yeah, I mean that's real unfortunate that they don't have Sadiq Bey. I mean, I'm not at all complaining about that. I mean, and we can talk about we can keep it on the Warriors for now. I definitely agree. I was thinking the exact same thing. They just wanted a familiar face. I would say a good counterpart for Jordan Poole as well. In like in I
It's a
almost said
good foil,
Oakland.
yeah.
I almost said in Oakland and Golden State in general. Um I don't know. Like I think it's fine doing what works. Like who are we to like can like criticize the Warriors for
Yeah.
doing what's made them successful? Like I think it's fine. I mean, yeah, I'd probably rather Bay too, but I mean, I have no issues with them reuniting with a player who was good for them.
Yep. I thought maybe they'd go for Caruso, but GP2 and Caruso are kind of similar players.
The Wiseman pick is one of the worst ones in recent memory,
Oh,
Oh
it
unfortunately.
yeah.
is.
It's real
Um,
bad.
yeah.
It's a shame we don't have Bombsy on the
It,
pod
it
today.
basically turned into not nothing, but way less than what you could have ever. Even the worst case scenario, really. Gary
Yeah.
Payton's solid, but for it to just come crashing down this fast.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, because we were all worried about it. Like when it was all happening, we're like, oh, they're gonna have all these players and James Wiseman, and then it unfortunately didn't really turn out. Though, I mean, maybe fortunately, maybe made the league more balanced,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's a little bit unfortunate for what's happened to him. I hope he
Yep.
can get a new start here.
Yep. All right. Moving on from the Warriors, just a few more. We don't really need to talk about these. We talked about the Suns getting Baisley a little bit. Odd one. He's kind of a player that doesn't feel ready to win like this, but we'll say he's a big wing. Give him some minutes. They need the minutes on the wing, so that'll be interesting. Celtics traded for Klay Thompson, also known as Mike Muscala. If you watched the game where LeBron broke the scoring record, Mike Muscala went like 4 for 5 or 5 for 6 from three. Dude was unreal in that game, but
Unconscious.
unconscious. Yeah, it's a good ad. The Celtics, interestingly, beat the Sixers last night with a kind of a barrage from three from Blake Griffin because the Sixers just wouldn't guard him.
Yeah, they had
It's
like
not
no players last night and still
it,
won.
yeah, and they couldn't trade him. So Mike Muscala coming in there, kind of playing that a little bit of the not quite. He's not he's not a great player, but he'll play some minutes for them, kind of fill in the Gallo role they imagined Gallo would have had. He's not quite as good as Gallo, but shoot some threes, play stretch 4 or 5 minutes. It'll be good for them. The 76ers added Jalen McDaniels and got rid of Thibault and got under the luxury tax and added 2 second-round picks all in one deal somehow. Daryl Morey always making smart trades, never ceases to amaze how he convinces people to do trades that just clearly he has no drawbacks and all benefits for his team.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, that was super impressive. I was so wrong about Thibault though. Like, oh, I was so wrong. I thought he was gonna be like a super like good player. I thought like his offensive game would progress enough to pair with his great defense and whatever. But I
His
mean,
defense continues to be like generational. He just has literally no offense. What
I
speed?
mean, kind of like the today's like modern. I guess like he's not that old. I mean, he was in the league a season or two ago. Andre Roberson type. Like,
Cephalosha, the guy.
Yeah, but his offense is even somehow worse than these bums.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
they're
they've
not
cut their
bums.
losses well because they could have gotten more for Thibault, probably the 76ers, but I mean they still did well. So
Yeah,
They got a they got a solid player.
I think Jalen McDaniels is better than Thibault, and it saves them money and they get the pick. So I don't
Thibault's a
mind that at
rental
all.
too, so they get
Yeah,
a bit more
yeah.
control.
And then all right, some more contender moves that are a little smaller. The Nuggets obviously traded 3 second-round picks for Thomas Bryant. Uh, they no longer have to play DeAndre Jordan any minutes. That's a big deal, I think, personally. Thomas Bryant is a really solid offensive center. If you could keep Murray out there with him, you can kind of run a much more competent bench unit, I think, than when DeAndre Jordan was out there. And Bryant, I think that's all these second-round picks are being thrown around for everyone. And when you think about it, it's like, oh, the values is hard to evaluate. But Bryant, I think, is a good fit with Denver and will give him good minutes. And I feel much better about their bench unit now with Thomas Bryant. Anything anyone wants to say on that, or can we move on from the Bryant
We
thing?
can already
Yeah, I
right.
mean,
over
I
that.
think you got that one
All right.
covered.
And then Memphis in that big trade that landed the Clippers, Eric Gordon. At least I think it was that one. It might have been the
Yes,
Plumlee trade.
it
It
was
was
that
that one.
one.
It was the Eric Gordon one. All right. They ended up sending out some second round picks and adding Luke Kennard, which I also, it's fine. Solid move. Add some depth. Add some, a little bit of, Luke Kennard obviously is a shooter, and a little bit of, I wouldn't even call it secondary creator, like a tertiary creator in an offense where he can, run a little, like run one or two pick and rolls a game, that kind of thing, where he's kind of a someone who can create just a little bit. But to we're running long on time here already, I think. Not long, but we're taking a while. We're going to go into a few more deals that happened yesterday. We'll kind of touch on these quickly. But Jakob Poeltl was traded to the Spurs for a protected 2024 firsts and 2
You mean
seconds.
to the Raptors?
To the Raptors, sorry, from the Spurs to the Raptors. There's a lot of trades. My brain's going crazy.
No, it's fine. I made that mistake earlier today,
Yeah,
actually.
from the Spurs to the Raptors, as opposed to 4 years ago when it was from the Raptors to the Spurs.
Yep.
For a first that's protected in 2 seconds. Not as interested in talking about exactly the trade of him because he's a good player. They need a center. It makes sense. They'll extend him. It'll make a long-term fit there. And they've needed a center for a while. They've been trying this, lineup of all these wings, and they needed a true center, and it's good for them to get one. I think more interestingly, the Raptors, not sellers at all. None of their guys were traded.
They actually bought,
maybe Van Vliet, maybe Trent, maybe Anunoby, even maybe Siakam. We thought, but
Yeah,
none of them.
Everyone kind of knew the Raptors were a decent team. I mean, I've been saying I think they've gotten a little unlucky in some of their losses this year, but now it's like they're probably going to make the playoffs if they keep. I mean, their record isn't very great right now, but the roster is definitely there, in my opinion. It's not amazing, but they're pretty decently set up there.
I mean, on paper, I feel like the Raptors shouldn't even have to be in the play-in game. They should slot in at like that 5 or 6 or whatever on paper because they've got so many guys to score the ball. They've got like Siakam or Van Vliet as like those main 2 guys. Gary Trent, whatever you want.
Barnes.
Whatever you want, they have it.
Scotty Barnes is awesome.
But I mean, it's real like head scratcher for me. I don't get why they haven't been able to work it out, but I mean, I guess you can only give so many minutes to so many guys, but I'm not counting them out yet.
I'm sad that they lost to Otto Porter.
Yeah,
that would have been a big help.
Yeah, I think they needed a center. They were getting out rebounded and outsized every game, and that was kind of their biggest problem. So this, I guess, is the logical step they would go if they're not going to sell. They needed to get a big, and they did that. And Pearl's a really solid player, but it's certainly interesting that they didn't sell. I think it's when you think about it, it's like all of these names. It's like Van Vliet and Trent and Anunoby and Siakam, all in trade rumors. It's like, guys, that's almost the entire starting 5. If all of those players are contributors on good teams, what does it mean if they're all on the same team? That probably means they're a good team.
Yeah.
And especially with Scotty, I didn't mention Scotty Barnes because they're not trading him because he's a blue chip prospect and he's going to be amazing for a long time. But if you're running out lineups with, Van Vliet, Anunoby, Siakam, Poeltl now, and one of Barnes, and then Trent off the bench, and that team should be, especially with the Nets now probably in a little bit of a free fall. Although the Nets roster is good enough that they'll stay in the play-in ish area, but I think they can compete. But I'm glad they made the Poeltl trade because I wouldn't have wanted them to. They definitely should have done something. Either add a true center so that you can try and compete a little bit, or sell it and kind of go into the tank for a little bit here because Van Vliet and Trent are free agents coming up. And honestly, if Masai Ujiri tends to play it a little more safe because he's always able to hit on picks late in the draft. But if I was the Raptors, I kind of would have wanted to trade. I kind of would have been very tempted to move on from everything but Siakam and Barnes and try and go in that Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson sweepstakes. And if I could the Raptors have won the lottery and got Wembanyama and have Barnes that have been the most insane core in the young core in a long time. But yeah, moving on from them, just to quickly touch on the Josh Hart trade. Not much to talk about here. The Knicks got a nice wing, and Josh Hart traded Cam Reddish and a protected first. Josh Hart's a good player. He gets to play with Jalen Brunson again, like they played at Villanova. I saw that clip of Jalen Brunson all excited about it, and that should be fun for those two. And he'll add, needed wing competence for the Knicks there. And the Blazers are making head scratching moves.
They're
Not
doing
quite sure what
nothing.
they're doing. Not quite sure what they're doing. But Dame, it's okay, man. You can ask out in the summer. You really can.
They've never made a good move in years, it feels like.
Which by the way, Ryan Arcidiacono is in the deal. Also Villanova player going in the opposite direction. Like
We'll
I got up right now just off like the top of my head, but they had him, Sadiq Bey, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, all these guys you like mentioned today coming from Villanova. I mean, for me, it's weird.
It's a big day for Villanova
at the same time, yeah. They were all just there. But
yeah,
that's mostly everything, unless we want to just glance over.
Yeah, that's all the trades. We just want a few things that didn't happen. We talked about the Raptors. Talked a little bit about the Nets wings. We really thought O'Neal or Joe Harris or Seth Curry or even Finney Smith or Crowder was the only one that was dealt, and we thought maybe they'd send out somebody else. And we can let Stans talk about this. Neither Bogdan Bogdanovic or John Collins was traded. We thought maybe one of those guys would trade it, but instead the Hawks turned out to be buyers and ended up with Sadiq Bey. So interesting there. And then Bojan from the Pistons also ended up staying pat, even though there were some rumors that the Lakers were. Ramona Shelburne seemed to imply they were getting pretty close like the last hour, but then I think it probably fell apart.
What a deadline it would have been if they could have done all that.
If they could have gone, I don't know. But I don't know about giving, it would have been like it would have been that 29 first round pick. And I don't know that I'm giving up a first round pick for a 33-year-old at this point.
Totally buying in on this season.
I would. You can always revisit that deal in the offseason is the thing, because you now have the Bamba contract that is movable and stuff like that. So it's all addressable then.
I mean, all right. I mean, I try to go into like my stuff, my business.
Yeah. You can talk about your Hawks business.
Yeah, there we go. So we spent a lot of capital getting DeJounte Murray into the franchise. So I'm in favor of us being buyers. However, I wonder if we could have sold decently high, because John Collins over the last stretch has played not as great as he has, but better than he has the rest of this season. And then I would have kept him, but we got Sadiq Bey, which means I would have been more in favor of dealing Collins with Sadiq Bey. I mean, it's very interesting, Sadiq Bey, because like feels like kind of holds the ball a decent amount for a team that already has DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. Like, there's really not a lot of room for guys who really hold the ball at all very much. Like, Kevin Huerter might not have been the best fit if he was still on the team or whatever that may be. I don't know. I'm not really that disappointed. I mean, so many second-round picks were being tossed around that I'm fine giving up 5 for Sadiq Bey.
Yeah,
it just
like monopoly money.
Yeah, it just means like our team is. We already had a fairly deep roster. It's just a little bit deeper now, which I mean, I'm cool with, because I still believe that this team can win. Maybe not the title, but we can win.
Playoff series, or maybe 2 at best.
Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Pushing it, but
that's why I said it was pushing it, but I said at best. Like,
if we get lucky, I mean, nobody had us beating the 76ers. So
that's fair. Yep. Hawks making some interesting moves, but
Bojan's making none. Though. Like, I thought he was probably gonna go, or Bojan. I thought Bogdan was gonna stay for the Hawks. I wanted him to stay. I didn't mention him. I wanted Bogdan to stay because he's a bucket. I love him. But for Bojan, I mean, Bojan is too. For the people who aren't brothers, I thought somebody would like Detroit's not really in a position where they really need to hold on to Bojan at all. Like I thought they would take they might not get like as high as like as a return as they want, but they don't really need him. I don't know. I feel like somebody could have taken him.
Yeah, they're talking about the Pistons really like him. They want him to be kind of an older vet for that young core that they're going to start building, especially because they're going to have another high pick this year. But to me, I don't know. If you could get a first round pick, even if it's protected, I would have tried to do it because it sounds like they definitely had an offer of at least a first round pick somewhere. It sounds like
Yeah.
the Lakers offered. I'm sure the contention on that Lakers pick was what the protections looked like because you're not giving up 2029 unprotected for a 33-year-old right now, about to be 34. But I guess it would have depended on what the protections would have been. But yeah, I thought if I was the Pistons, I would have moved Bojan. But I guess he's under contract; they can still move him in the summer.
Got to
Yeah.
keep that middle schooler if you're Rob Pelinka. Like
Gotta,
heaven forbid you give up a guy like double that draft pick's age.
no, but I get it. You can't trading unprotected picks out in the future unless you're getting a superstar is
Yeah.
irresponsible team building.
Well, I mean, I'd
Which
expect
Pelinka would have done in the past, but this is a new Rob Pelinka. Rob Pelinka uses protection now. Pause.
that was
Uh,
good. That was good.
all right. I think that's all we have on
I think so.
the trade deadline. So I think we can just close it out with the Nick Miller question of the day. All rights reserved, copyright, trademark, all that stuff.
Opening up my app.
All rights reserved.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna give you. He actually spoiler didn't send me one, so I have one that I'm gonna use that Nick Miller did send me actually. Actually, he did send me this. But I know the answers. I can't tell you. This I think you both should get this, but the question
Whoa.
is, will you
Oh,
get the
God.
second part? Will you get the second part?
Oh, this is the second part.
Which NBA player has been traded the most times in their career, and how many times have they been traded?
I mean, I think I know the player. I'm pretty sure this is right. It might not be. I know he's in the top three.
Shit, this is tough because I know there's been someone that's been on a ton of teams, but I'm not sure how many are trades. Like,
Oh, trades, or are we just talking about total
Just
team?
trades. Who has
Just
been traded the
trades.
Oh,
most
that
times?
that changes my number.
I'm gonna maybe change my player.
Yeah, wait, hold on. I'm changing my player because
Okay, I locked in my answer. I don't know if this is right. I might
Oh,
be
sorry. Yeah,
overthinking
no.
it.
I mean teams. I mean teams. I mean teams. Like, but he's been
Oh,
traded. The player who's been traded the most times has played for all of the teams he's been traded to, or
okay.
most of them. Yeah. All right. Do you
so
have an
so
answer?
so for the number, are we going for total teams or trades still?
Teams.
Okay.
Okay. I have my answer.
I might be wrong here, but
All
I
right.
got
Let's see it. Stance.
I went with Ish Smith and 13.
All right. Kobe.
See,
might be
I
wrong.
was thinking Ish Smith, but I'm not sure how many were trades. So that was my original answer, but I changed it to Trevor Ariza with 8.
Oh, it might be him.
It's Ish Smith. 13.
No
Let's
way.
go.
He was
First
traded
point.
all those
That's-
times.
That's 2 points.
2 points. I'm finally on the board for the Nick Miller question of the day. Fun fact.
See, I overthought it. That's
Yeah.
so sad. I know he's been on the most teams.
I was trying. It was hard to Google because it was giving me Ariza and Ish Smith for all the answers. But the one I was trying to ask was Ish Smith. But that might have been
Yeah, I knew Ish
Yeah,
Smith had been on
because
the most teams.
Trevor Reeves has been on a lot. He said that. I'm like, oh God, I think COVID might have actually gotten me here.
Yeah.
I said
like,
8 teams for Ariza. Let me see how many teams he's actually played for.
All right.
It looks like he's played for like 10. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's a lot. All right.
I thought it was like 11 or 12 or something, but
Stans is on the board. A lot of crazy trades. Suns got Durant. Lakers overhauled their roster. Obviously, the Kyrie trade. But that was a lot of fun. This deadline. We'll be back with a Super Bowl recap after the Super Bowl and another basketball pod next week, and hopefully another baseball pod sometime in the next week or so as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
seasons.
closer to 2 week window for the baseball pods will pick up once the season starts starting. You'll get
Yeah.
1.5 a week is what I'll
Well,
say.
when spring training's there, apparently I might be going to a game or two in Florida, so I might have to do a little reporter session. We'll see
Reporter
what happens.
session, yeah, that'd be pretty
Reporting
great.
live from
All right.
Sarasota.
All right. Anyways, this has been the Bird Rights Podcast. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.